My name is Valentina, and up until last year, I was just another 23-year-old struggling to make ends meet in the vibrant, chaotic city of Miami. I worked as a barista in a small, independent coffee shop nestled in the heart of Wynwood, surrounded by colorful murals and the constant hum of creativity. My life was simple, predictable, and if I'm being honest, a little bit boring. I shared a tiny apartment with two roommates, ate ramen more often than I'd like to admit, and spent my free time sketching in my worn-out notebook, dreaming of a future where I could actually call myself an artist. I wasn't actively looking for a relationship, let alone a whirlwind romance, but fate, as it often does, had other plans. One sweltering afternoon, a man walked into the coffee shop who seemed to have stepped straight out of a magazine. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that somehow didn't look out of place in the artsy neighborhood, and possessed the kind of effortless charm that could disarm even the most cynical of hearts. His name was Ricardo. He ordered an espresso, black, and his eyes, the color of rich mahogany, held mine a beat too long. Ricardo quickly became a regular, stopping by every day for his espresso and a brief conversation. He learned my name, asked about my sketches, and seemed genuinely interested in my life, a stark contrast to the indifferent customers I usually served. He was sophisticated, worldly, and undeniably wealthy, a world away from my humble existence. Yet he treated me with a kindness and respect that made me feel seen, valued, and dare I say, special. One evening, after weeks of flirtatious banter and stolen glances, Ricardo invited me to dinner. I hesitated, overwhelmed by a mixture of excitement and trepidation. I had never been on a date with someone like him, someone who moved in a different sphere of reality. But I couldn't resist the pull, the magnetic attraction that had been building between us. Our first date was magical. He took me to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the glittering Miami skyline. The food was exquisite, the conversation flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living in a movie. He listened intently as I spoke about my dreams, my fears, and my passion for art, never once making me feel self-conscious about my humble background. He seemed genuinely captivated by my perspective, by the way I saw the world. Over the next few months, Ricardo and I became inseparable. He showered me with attention, whisking me away on weekend getaways to luxurious resorts, introducing me to his circle of influential friends, and opening my eyes to a world I had only ever dreamed of. He told me he was a self-made millionaire, having built his fortune in real estate, and admired my ambition, always encouraging me to pursue my art. I fell hard and fast, blinded by the whirlwind romance and the intoxicating allure of a life I never thought possible. He was everything I thought I wanted, successful, charming, and seemingly head over heels in love with me. I truly believed I had found my Prince Charming. Then the fairy tale began to crumble. It started subtly, with small inconsistencies in his stories, unexplained absences, and a growing possessiveness that I initially mistook for affection. He became increasingly controlling, dictating what I wore, who I spent time with, and even how I should pursue my art. He dismissed my friends as unrefined and subtly discouraged me from spending time at the coffee shop, claiming it was beneath me now that I was with him. He wanted me all to himself. One afternoon, while I was at his penthouse apartment, a package arrived. It was addressed to him, but the return address was a name I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a small engraved heart. My heart sank. It wasn't for me. That night when Ricardo returned, I confronted him. He initially denied everything, dismissing my concerns as paranoia. But when I showed him the bracelet, his face paled. He confessed to having a complicated situation with a former girlfriend, someone he claimed he was still financially tied to. He swore it meant nothing, that he was truly in love with me and begged for my forgiveness. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being manipulated. The rose-tinted glasses had shattered, revealing a darker side to the man I thought I knew. I started to dig, driven by a desperate need to uncover the truth. I spent hours online, scouring public records, social media, anything that could shed light on Ricardo's past. What I discovered was far more shocking than I could have ever imagined. He wasn't just hiding a former girlfriend, he was living a double life. He was married, my world shattered. The man I had given my heart to, the man I had believed to be my future, was a fraud. He had lied to me, manipulated me, and used me for his own twisted game. The pain was excruciating, a gaping wound in my soul. But beneath the pain, a cold, hard anger began to simmer. I had been a fool, a naive girl blinded by the promise of wealth and romance, but I wouldn't be a victim. I would get my revenge. The first step was confronting him. I arranged to meet him at his penthouse, the scene of so many lies and broken promises. He arrived with a bouquet of roses and a practiced look of remorse. But this time, I wasn't buying it. I laid out all the evidence I had gathered: the marriage certificate, the photos of him with his wife, the countless inconsistencies in his stories. He tried to deny it at first, but the truth was undeniable. He finally broke down, begging for my forgiveness, promising to leave his wife, claiming he had only married her for her family's money. His words were meaningless. The trust was gone, irrevocably broken. I told him I was done, that I never wanted to see him again. But I didn't stop there. I told him that I knew about his shady business dealings, the offshore accounts, the fraudulent real estate schemes he had been involved in. I told him I had copies of everything, and that if he didn't leave me alone, I would expose him to the authorities. He scoffed, dismissing my threats as empty. He underestimated me. He thought I was just a naive artist, easily manipulated and controlled. But he didn't know the fire that burned within me, the determination to right the wrong he had inflicted upon me. I had nothing to lose, and I was willing to risk everything to bring him down. He didn't know that confronting him and ending things was only the beginning of my plan. Now that I had broken free, I was going to make him pay for all the pain he had caused me. But how could I, a simple barista, bring down a wealthy and powerful man like Ricardo? The answer came to me in the most unexpected of places: my art. I realized my sketches, the very thing he had initially admired, could become my weapon. I decided to create a series of paintings, each one a subtle yet damning portrayal of Ricardo's true nature. I wouldn't explicitly name him, but I would depict his likeness, his penthouse, his lifestyle, all veiled in symbolism that would be clear to anyone who knew him. The paintings would tell the story of a predatory man who preyed on the innocent, a wolf in sheep's clothing. I started working feverishly, pouring all my anger, pain, and resentment into my art. I transformed my tiny apartment into a studio, covering the walls with sketches and canvases. I barely slept, fueled by caffeine and a burning desire for revenge. I knew I had to be careful. Ricardo had eyes everywhere, and I couldn't risk him finding out about my plan before it was ready. I confided in only my closest friends, swearing them to secrecy. They were shocked by what I had been through, but wholeheartedly supported my quest for justice. As the paintings began to take shape, I started to think about how to unveil them to the world. A gallery exhibition was the obvious choice, but I needed to ensure it would reach the right audience, the people who moved in Ricardo's circles, the people who needed to see him for who he truly was. I reached out to a gallery owner in Wynwood, someone I had met during my time at the coffee shop. I showed her my portfolio, carefully selecting pieces that hinted at my new direction without revealing too much. She was impressed by my talent and intrigued by the subtle darkness that seemed to be creeping into my work. She offered me a solo exhibition, and I accepted without hesitation. The exhibition was scheduled for 3 months, giving me enough time to complete the series of paintings and plan the unveiling. I spent the next few weeks perfecting my art, adding layers of symbolism and detail that would resonate with those who knew Ricardo. I also started to discreetly spread rumors about the exhibition, hinting that it would expose the secrets of Miami's elite. The whispers traveled quickly, piquing the curiosity of the city's socialites and attracting the attention of the local media. I knew Ricardo would hear about it eventually, but I hoped to keep him in the dark for as long as possible. The opening night arrived, and I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. I had poured my heart and soul into these paintings, and I was about to unleash them upon the world. The gallery was packed with people, a sea of faces eager to see what I had created. I saw my friends, my roommates, and even a few familiar faces from the coffee shop. But Ricardo was nowhere to be seen. As people began to examine the paintings, I watched their reactions with bated breath. Some were confused, others intrigued, but as they pieced together the symbolism, their expressions shifted to shock and recognition. I saw whispers and gasps as they connected the dots, realizing who the paintings were about. The atmosphere in the gallery was electric. Then he arrived. Ricardo strode through the crowd, his face a mask of fury. He had finally realized the trap I had laid for him. He made his way towards me, his eyes burning with rage. I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated. "Valentina," he hissed, "what is the meaning of this?" I smiled, a cold, calculated smile that mirrored the one he had worn when he first seduced me. "This, Ricardo," I said, "is my masterpiece." My voice echoed through the gallery, silencing the murmurs and gasps. Ricardo's face contorted with fury, a stark contrast to the charming facade he usually presented to the world. He lunged towards me, but a couple of onlookers, now fully aware of the situation, stepped in to block his path. "Get out of my way," he roared, his composure completely shattered. "This is between me and her." The gallery owner, a petite woman named Sophia with a surprisingly strong presence, stepped forward. "Ricardo," she said, her voice firm, "I think it's time for you to leave." He glared at her, then back at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of rage and desperation. "You haven't heard the last of this, Valentina," he spat, before storming out of the gallery, leaving a trail of stunned silence in his wake. As the door slammed shut behind him, a wave of relief washed over me. The first phase of my plan was complete. The truth was out in the open, and Ricardo's carefully constructed world had begun to crumble. But I knew this was just the beginning. He wouldn't go down without a fight, and I needed to be prepared for whatever he threw my way. The next morning, the news of the exhibition and Ricardo's dramatic exit had spread like wildfire throughout Miami's high society. The local newspapers and gossip blogs were buzzing with speculation, and my paintings had become the talk of the town. I received a flood of messages from friends, acquaintances, and even strangers, all offering their support and admiration. But amidst the praise, there was also a sense of unease. I knew Ricardo was a powerful man, and I had just publicly humiliated him. I had to be careful. I spent the day at my apartment, glued to my laptop, monitoring the news and social media for any sign of Ricardo's response. I also contacted a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Alina who specialized in high-profile cases. I explained the situation to her, providing her with all the evidence I had gathered, and asked her to represent me in case Ricardo decided to retaliate. Alina listened intently, her expression grim. "Valentina," she said, "you've stirred up a hornet's nest. Ricardo isn't going to take this lying down. We need to be prepared for anything." She advised me to stay out of the public eye, to avoid any contact with Ricardo, and to let her handle all communication with him and his legal team. I agreed, knowing that I needed her expertise and protection. That evening, as I was scrolling through Instagram, I came across a post that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of my apartment building, taken from across the street. The caption read, "Nice view, Valentina. Hope you're enjoying your 15 minutes of fame." I immediately recognized the handle as belonging to one of Ricardo's associates, a smarmy, sycophantic man named Javier. It was a clear threat, a message that Ricardo was watching me, that he knew where I lived. I felt a surge of panic, but I refused to let fear consume me. I forwarded the photo to Alina, who assured me that she would take care of it. She contacted the police, who agreed to increase patrols in my neighborhood and to investigate Javier for harassment. But I knew that wasn't enough. I couldn't rely on the police to protect me. I needed to take matters into my own hands. I decided to install a security system in my apartment, complete with cameras, alarms, and reinforced locks. I also started taking self-defense classes, determined to learn how to protect myself if Ricardo or his henchmen came after me. I was no longer just a naive artist. I was a woman on a mission, ready to fight for her survival. But even with all the precautions I was taking, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted. Every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat. Every phone call sent a shiver down my spine. I knew that Ricardo was capable of anything, and I wouldn't be safe until I had completely destroyed him. The next day, Alina called me with some news. "Ricardo has filed a lawsuit against you," she said, her voice grim. "He's accusing you of defamation, harassment, and invasion of privacy. He's claiming that your paintings are false and malicious, and that they have caused him irreparable damage to his reputation and business." I wasn't surprised. I knew he would try to silence me, to discredit me, to make me look like a crazy woman. But I was ready for him. "What do we do?" I asked Alina. "We fight back," she said. "We'll use his lawsuit as an opportunity to expose his lies and his crimes. We'll subpoena his financial records. We'll depose his associates. We'll uncover every dirty secret he's been hiding." I felt a surge of determination. This was it. The gloves were off. It was time to take the fight to Ricardo and show him that I wouldn't be intimidated. But as Alina outlined the legal strategy, I couldn't help but wonder if I was in over my head. Ricardo was a powerful man with deep pockets and a team of high-priced lawyers. Could I really win this battle? I pushed the doubt aside. I had come too far to back down now. I had to see this through, no matter the cost. But as I prepared for the legal battle ahead, I received another unexpected blow. My gallery exhibition was shut down. Sophia, the gallery owner, called me in tears, explaining that she had received a threatening visit from Ricardo's lawyers, who had threatened to sue her for damages if she continued to display my paintings. She had no choice but to comply. I was furious. Ricardo was using his power and influence to silence me, to erase my voice, to destroy my reputation. I felt like I was being suffocated, that the walls were closing in on me, but I refused to give up. I wouldn't let him win. I decided to take my art online. I created a website where I could display my paintings and share my story with the world. I wrote a detailed account of my relationship with Ricardo, exposing his lies, his infidelity, and his shady business dealings. I included photos, documents, and other evidence to support my claims. I knew it was a risky move, but I felt like I had nothing to lose. I had to get the truth out there, no matter the consequences. I launched the website, and within hours it went viral. People from all over the world were sharing my story, expressing their outrage at Ricardo's behavior and their support for me. The website became a platform for other victims of abuse and manipulation to share their stories, creating a powerful movement of solidarity and empowerment. Ricardo's reputation was crumbling. His name was being dragged through the mud, and his business was suffering. He was furious, and he vowed to retaliate. He hired a team of hackers to try to shut down my website, but I was prepared for him. I had hired my own cybersecurity experts to protect my site and to track down the hackers. They were able to identify the source of the attack and to provide the information to the authorities. Ricardo's hackers were arrested, and he was facing criminal charges. I was gaining the upper hand, but Ricardo wasn't giving up. He decided to launch a smear campaign against me, spreading lies and rumors about my past, trying to discredit me and to make me look like a gold digger and a liar. He leaked private photos of me to the media, trying to humiliate me and to destroy my reputation. I was devastated. I felt like I was being stripped naked in front of the world, that my privacy had been violated in the most brutal way. I wanted to hide, to disappear, to escape the pain and the shame. But I refused to let him break me. I decided to fight back. I held a press conference where I addressed the lies and the rumors head-on. I admitted that I had made mistakes in my past, but I insisted that I was not a gold digger or a liar. I spoke passionately about my art, my dreams, and my determination to seek justice. I showed the world that I was a strong, resilient woman who wouldn't be silenced. My press conference was a turning point. The public's perception of me began to shift. People started to see me as a victim, not a villain. They admired my courage and my determination. Ricardo's smear campaign backfired, and his reputation suffered even more. He was losing control. But I knew he wouldn't give up. He was desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. I had to be careful. As I navigated the legal battles and the media frenzy, I started to receive anonymous threats. I would get phone calls in the middle of the night, with a distorted voice warning me to drop the lawsuit or face the consequences. I would find threatening notes slipped under my door, with graphic descriptions of what Ricardo would do to me. I was terrified, but I refused to be intimidated. I reported the threats to the police, who increased their patrols around my apartment. I also hired a personal bodyguard, a former military officer named Marcus, who was always by my side. I knew that Ricardo was trying to scare me, to make me give up, but I wouldn't let him win. I was determined to see this through, no matter the cost. The lawsuit dragged on for months, with both sides presenting evidence and witnesses. Ricardo tried to portray himself as a victim, claiming that I had manipulated him and that my paintings were a form of extortion. But I was able to expose his lies and to reveal his true character. I presented evidence of his infidelity, his shady business dealings, and his attempts to silence me. I called witnesses who testified about his abusive behavior and his willingness to use his power and influence to get what he wanted. The judge was clearly skeptical of Ricardo's claims, and it seemed like I was on the verge of winning the case. But then, Ricardo played his trump card. He revealed that he had been secretly recording our conversations, and he presented excerpts that seemed to paint me in a negative light. The recordings were heavily edited, and they took my words out of context, but they were enough to create doubt in the judge's mind. I was devastated. I felt like Ricardo had outsmarted me, that he had found a way to twist the truth and to make me look like the bad guy. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was losing everything. But then, Alina came to me with a new piece of evidence. She had discovered that Ricardo had been bribing a government official to approve his fraudulent real estate projects. She had obtained documents that proved the bribery, and she was ready to present them to the court. This was it. This was the smoking gun that would finally bring Ricardo down. We presented the evidence to the judge, who was clearly shocked and disgusted. He immediately ordered Ricardo's arrest and dismissed his lawsuit against me. Ricardo was taken into custody, and he was facing serious criminal charges. I had won. I had finally defeated Ricardo and exposed his lies and his crimes to the world. I felt a surge of relief and triumph. I had overcome the odds and emerged victorious. But as I celebrated my victory, I couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness. I had spent so much time and energy on my quest for revenge that I had neglected other aspects of my life. My art had suffered, my friendships had strained, and my own mental health had deteriorated. I realized that revenge wasn't the answer. It didn't bring me the satisfaction I had expected, and it came at a high cost. I decided to focus on healing and rebuilding my life. I started therapy, where I worked through the trauma of my experience with Ricardo. I reconnected with my friends and family, and I dedicated myself to my art. I found a new gallery to represent me, and I started to create paintings that reflected my journey of healing and self-discovery. I also became an advocate for victims of abuse and manipulation, sharing my story and offering support to others who had been through similar experiences. I learned that the best revenge is to live a happy and fulfilling life, to rise above the pain, and to create something beautiful out of the ashes. But just when I thought I had put the past behind me, I received a letter from Ricardo. He was in prison, awaiting trial, and he wanted to meet with me. I was hesitant. I didn't want to see him again to relive the pain and the anger. But I also felt a sense of curiosity. I wanted to know what he had to say. I decided to visit him in prison, accompanied by Marcus, my bodyguard. When I saw him, he looked gaunt and defeated. The confident, charming Ricardo I had once known was gone, replaced by a broken and desperate man. He apologized for everything he had done, admitting that he had been wrong and that he had hurt me deeply. He said that he had lost everything, his freedom, his wealth, his reputation. He begged for my forgiveness. I listened to him, but I didn't say anything. I didn't know if I believed him, and I didn't know if I could ever forgive him. But I realized that his apology didn't matter. What mattered was that I had moved on, that I had found peace and healing. I left the prison, feeling a sense of closure. I knew that Ricardo would face justice for his crimes, and that he would never be able to hurt anyone again. I was finally free. A year later, I was standing in my own art studio, surrounded by canvases and paintbrushes. My career was thriving, and my paintings were being exhibited in galleries all over the world. I had found love again with a kind and supportive man who appreciated me for who I was. I was happy. But as I looked out the window, I saw a familiar face. It was Javier, Ricardo's former associate. He was standing across the street, staring at my studio. I felt a shiver down my spine. Was he there to threaten me? Was Ricardo planning something from behind bars? I didn't know, but I knew that I had to be prepared. The past may be behind me, but it was never truly gone. And as I stepped away from the window, I knew that my story was far from over. What was Javier planning? / instructions.